At our family Thanksgiving feast, I was told, "You can eat in the garage." My sister sneered, "Why bother with a chair for you?" I scanned the room. Everyone had a place, even my uncle who betrayed my trust. So I grabbed my gift, faced my sister, and said, "Look under your napkin." I walked out, slamming the gate behind me. Mom texted. Dad chased after me. The wind howled like a warning as I stood at the edge of my family's cliffside mansion in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, clutching a velvet gift box in one hand and a homemade pecan pie in the other. Rain lashed against my crimson gown, soaking the silk until it clung to my skin, but I barely noticed. My heart was a drumbeat, pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Lightning tore through the sky, illuminating the jagged coastline below, where waves crashed against rocks with a violence that mirrored the storm brewing inside me. This was it. Christmas Eve, my last chance to confront the betrayal that had festered in my family for decades. I, Emily Harper, celebrated investigative journalist, was done being the invisible middle child. Tonight, I'd make them see me, or I'd walk away forever. Another bolt of lightning struck, and in its fleeting glare I saw him, my brother Nathan, 37, leaning against the porch railing, his tech module smirk cutting through the shadows. He was whispering to a cluster of relatives, their heads bent toward him like disciples. "Emily's here," he said, loud enough for me to catch. "Brace yourselves for the disaster." The guests, our aunts, uncles, and cousins, chuckled, their laughter a knife twisting in my gut. Nathan's eyes met mine, cold and mocking, as if daring me to step into the lion's den. I tightened my grip on the gift box, feeling the weight of the dossier inside. Hacked emails, damning voicemails, a video of Nathan admitting he'd framed me for a workplace scandal that nearly cost me my career. This wasn't just a gift, it was a grenade, and I was ready to pull the pin. But I wasn't always this bold. Growing up in this sprawling Victorian mansion, with its creaking floors and ocean views, I was the overlooked shadow between Nathan, the golden child, and Sophie, our charming younger sister, now 31, and an influencer with 1 million followers. Our parents, Richard and Margaret Harper, had a clear hierarchy. Nathan, the prodigy who built a tech empire, Sophie, the adorable baby they still doted on, and me, somewhere in the middle, invisible unless I was being blamed. Nathan's cruelty started early. At 8, I poured my heart into a poetry journal for a school contest, each word a piece of my soul. I won first place, my first taste of pride. The night before the award ceremony, I found the journal in tatters, pages strewn across my bedroom floor like confetti. Emily plagiarized it, he told our parents, his voice dripping with fake concern. I tried to help her rewrite it, but she got mad, I sobbed, insisting it was mine, but Richard and Margaret believed him. They grounded me for a month, and Nathan walked away with a pat on the back. That was the first time I learned my truth didn't matter in this family. High school was worse. I worked tirelessly for a scholarship to Columbia, dreaming of escape. Nathan, then a senior, spread rumors I was unstable, whispering to teachers and classmates that I'd had a breakdown. The scholarship board caught wind, and my application was rejected. When I begged my parents to confront him, Margaret sighed. "Emily, don't be so dramatic." Richard just stared at his newspaper, silent as always. Nathan's lies didn't just steal opportunities, they chipped away at my sense of self, leaving me questioning if I was the problem. The drive to the mansion had been a nightmare, and not just because of the storm. As I'd pulled into the winding cliffside road, my car's brakes failed. The pedal went soft, then useless, and the car lurched toward the edge of the cliff. My scream caught in my throat as I yanked the wheel, skidding to a stop inches from the drop. Hard hammering, I stumbled out, rain soaking my dress, and checked the brake line. It was sliced clean, not frayed. A deliberate cut. Someone didn't want me here tonight. Nathan's smirk flashed in my mind, but I pushed the thought away. I had no proof. Not yet. Shaken but stubborn, I grabbed my gifts and pie, determined to face whatever waited inside. The mansion's oak doors loomed ahead, carved with ivy patterns that seemed to writhe in the storm's shadows. Before I could ring the bell, the door creaked open, revealing Margaret, my mother, in a pearl gray cashmere dress, her smile as brittle as ice. "Emily," she said, her tone clipped, like I was a delivery driver, not her daughter. "You're late." I wasn't. My watch read 3:00 p.m. sharp, but I bit my tongue. She glanced at the pecan pie, her lips thinning. "You shouldn't have bothered. We have caterers." Without offering to take my coat or the gifts, she turned and glided toward the kitchen, leaving me to wrestle the door shut against the wind. Inside, the foyer glowed with holiday warmth that felt like a lie. A massive chandelier dripped crystals, casting light on garlands of holly and a towering Christmas tree adorned with gold ornaments. The air smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon, undercut by the faint tang of ocean salt. Laughter and clinking glasses spilled from the living room, where my family mingled like actors in a holiday movie I wasn't cast in. I set the pie on a side table, my hands trembling, and adjusted the velvet box in my grip. The dossier inside was my weapon, but it wasn't the only gift I'd brought. For Richard, I'd found a first-edition Hemingway novel, his favorite. For Margaret, a silk shawl in her signature navy. For Sophie, a scrapbook of her engagement photos. Each gift was a plea. See me. Love me. But Nathan's gift was different. It was a reckoning. As I stepped toward the living room, I caught Margaret's voice, low and sharp, speaking to my Aunt Lillian near the staircase. "Keep an eye on Emily," she murmured. "She's been unpredictable lately. Therapy, you know." My stomach twisted. I'd confided in Margaret about my sessions with Dr. Lauren Carter, thinking she cared. Instead, she'd weaponized it, painting me as unstable before I'd even walked in. Lillian nodded, her eyes flicking toward me with a mix of pity and suspicion. I forced a smile, pretending I hadn't heard, but the betrayal stung like a slap. This was how it always started. Nathan set the narrative, Margaret reinforced it, and the family fell in line. Dr. Carter's words echoed in my mind as I steadied myself. "Emily, your family's dynamics are a rigged game. You can't win by playing their rules." She'd urged me to set boundaries, maybe even skip this Christmas, but I couldn't. Not yet. Last Thanksgiving had been the breaking point. I'd arrived proud, my Pulitzer nomination for a story exposing corporate fraud making headlines. But at dinner, the family fawned over Nathan's latest startup acquisition and Sophie's engagement to James, a hedge fund bro with a Rolex and a fake laugh. My nomination got a passing "that's nice, dear" from Margaret before she pivoted to Nathan's golf handicap. That night, I started therapy, unraveling years of gaslighting and manipulation. Dr. Carter helped me see the truth. My family didn't just overlook me, they erased me. But I wasn't ready to give up. I'd spent weeks preparing for tonight, crafting gifts and compiling Nathan's dossier. If this didn't change things, nothing would. The living room was a sea of familiar faces, all turned away from me. Richard, my father, was clapping Sophie's fiancé, James, on the back, laughing at some Wall Street anecdote. "That's my future son-in-law," he boomed, his voice warm in a way it never was for me. Across the room, Nathan held court with our uncles, gesturing like a politician, his wife Rachel at his side, her diamond bracelet glinting. Sophie flitted between groups, her blonde curls bouncing, her influencer charm on full display. I scanned the crowd for Clara, my cousin, and found her by the fireplace, laughing with her new boyfriend Ethan. Around her neck gleamed the sapphire ring set in antique silver that grandmother Evelyn had promised me. The sight hit like a punch. Evelyn had shown me that ring as a child, telling stories of our ancestors who brought it from Ireland during the Great Famine. "It's yours someday, Emily," she'd said, her eyes soft. But after her funeral 5 years ago, I found Clara wearing it. When I confronted her, she claimed Evelyn gave it to her privately. Nathan backed her up, convincing the family I was confused by grief. Margaret told me to drop it. Richard said I was making a scene. The ring became a symbol of everything stolen from me, not just an heirloom, but my voice, my place. I set my gifts under the tree, the velvet box heavier than the others, and tried to join a conversation. Aunt Lillian was describing her Alaskan cruise to a group of cousins. "It sounds incredible," I said, stepping into the circle. "I've been researching sustainable travel for my next story." Lillian's smile faltered and she turned slightly, excluding me. "Anyway, the glaciers were breathtaking," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. The cousins followed her lead, their backs forming a wall. I stood there, cheeks burning, feeling like a ghost. This wasn't new. Every holiday, every reunion, I'd try to connect, only to be dismissed. Nathan's lies had painted me as the problem child, too intense, too sensitive, too everything, and the family bought it, every time. Sophie broke away from James and gave me a quick hug, her perfume sweet and overpowering. "Love the dress," she whispered, then leaned closer. "Just a heads up, don't mention your Pulitzer. Mom's been stressed, and last time you brought it up she had a migraine for days." I blinked, stunned. My Pulitzer nomination wasn't just an achievement, it was proof I'd clawed my way out of Nathan's shadow. But even Sophie, the nice sibling, wanted me to shrink myself to keep the peace. Before I could respond, Clara swept in, Ethan on her arm. "Everyone meet Ethan," she announced, her voice bright. The family swarmed them, offering drinks and questions. Clara's eyes met mine, and the sapphire ring caught the light, a deliberate taunt. I forced myself to look away, my nails digging into my palms. The storm outside rattled the windows, a reminder of the cliffside path I'd crossed to get here. It was a narrow walkway, slick with rain, bordered by a flimsy wooden railing. Halfway across, the railing had given way, splintering under my hand. I'd stumbled, my foot slipping over the edge, the sea roaring below. For a moment, I thought I'd fall, my life flashing before me, every lie, every betrayal. But I caught myself on a rock, heart racing, and scrambled to safety. The railing hadn't just rotted. It looked sawed, the cut fresh and clean, like the brake line. 2 near misses in one day weren't coincidence. Someone wanted me gone, and Nathan's sneer from the porch was all I could see. Margaret called for family photos, arranging everyone in front of the marble fireplace. "Nathan and Rachel in the center," she directed. "Sophie and James on the left, Clara and Ethan on the right." Aunts and uncles filled the gaps, their smiles practiced. I stood to the side, waiting for my place. Margaret stepped back, assessing the group, then turned to me. "Emily, could you take the photos? You're so good with camera." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were hard. I swallowed the lump in my throat, taking the camera, my hands shaking. Click after click, I captured my family's perfect tableau, their laughter echoing while I stood outside it, invisible behind the lens. This was my role, the observer, never the subject. I busied myself arranging appetizers in the dining room, trying to shake the sting, when Nathan sauntered over. He looked me up and down, his smirk sharp enough to cut. "Crimson's a bold choice for you," he said loud enough for nearby relatives to hear. "But I guess journalists don't need fashion sense, right? How's therapy going, by the way? Mom says you're working through some issues." Heat flooded my face. My therapy was private, shared with Margaret in a rare moment of vulnerability. Now, Nathan was using it to humiliate me, and the relatives' whispers confirmed it was working. I gripped a tray of bruschetta, forcing a smile. "How's your startup, Nathan? I heard investors are getting nervous." His eyes narrowed, but he recovered quickly. "My portfolio's bulletproof. Unlike your career after that little scandal," he leaned closer, voice low. "We're all so worried about your stability, Em." He patted my shoulder, condescending and cruel, then rejoined Rachel, who hadn't heard the exchange but smiled at him anyway. The dining room was being set, and I noticed something wrong. Margaret was obsessive about her holiday table: bone china, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, each place marked with a calligraphy card. I counted the settings: 10 plates, 10 chairs, 12 people including me. My name wasn't there. I found Margaret in the kitchen, basting the turkey, her movements precise. "Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach, "there's no place card for me." She didn't look up. "Don't worry about it, Emily. Why don't you refill the wine decanters?" Her dismissal was casual, but it landed like a blow. I did as she asked, but as I returned, I overheard her whispering to Lillian in the hallway. "Emily's making a fuss, as usual," Margaret said. "She never enjoys these things, always so sullen." Lillian hesitated. "But surely there's room for one more chair." Margaret sighed. "Richard's knee is acting up. He needs space. And Nathan wanted an intimate dinner. You know how he feels about Emily's attitude." They fell silent as they saw me, wine decanter in hand. Lillian looked embarrassed. Margaret just took the decanter and walked away. I retreated to the guest bathroom, locking the door, my reflection pale in the mirror. How had I been so naive? I'd come hoping for a seat at the table, but they'd already decided I didn't belong. The brake failure, the sabotaged railing, were they accidents, or was someone, maybe Nathan, trying to keep me away? I splashed cold water on my face, my resolve hardening. I had 2 choices: leave now, tail between my legs, or stay and face whatever they had planned. The dossier under Nathan's plate was my ace. I'd spent months gathering evidence, emails where he bragged about sabotaging my career, voicemails plotting to turn the family against me, a video from last Christmas where he laughed about framing me for leaking confidential sources, and the will. Grandmother Evelyn's real will, naming me as the heir to the sapphire ring, not Clara. Nathan had intercepted it, forging a new one to give Clara the ring and keep me silenced. Tonight I'd expose him, or I'd lose myself trying. But the mansion held more secrets than I'd anticipated. Earlier, Margaret had asked me to fetch extra ornaments from the attic, a task that felt like another way to keep me out of sight. The attic was a maze of dusty trunks and cobwebs, lit by a single flickering bulb. As I rummaged through boxes, the door slammed shut behind me, the lock clicking. My breath caught. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing. No answer. But through a crack in the door, I saw a shadow move. Someone watching, their breath heavy. I pounded on the door, my fists bruising, until the lock clicked again and the door swung open. The hallway was empty, but the air felt charged, like I'd narrowly escaped something worse than a prank. Was it Nathan? Clara? Or someone else entirely? The dossier wasn't just a risk, it was a threat to whoever wanted me gone. Back in the living room, I steadied myself, the storm outside mirroring the chaos within. Margaret's voice rang out, "Dinner is served." Family members drifted toward the dining room, their chatter unbroken, as if my absence from the table was already forgotten. The dining room was a masterpiece. A mahogany table gleamed under a chandelier, red candles flickering in silver holders, a centerpiece of roses and pine cones professionally arranged. The china, used only for Christmas, featured gold-rimmed holly patterns. Each napkin was folded into a star, each place card a work of Margaret's calligraphy. Everyone found their seats, exclaiming over the beauty, but I stood in the doorway, an outsider in my own home. Richard took the head, Margaret the foot. Nathan and Rachel sat at Richard's right, Sophie and James at Margaret's. Clara and Ethan faced Nathan, with Lillian and Uncle Henry completing the circle. 10 chairs, 10 names, none of them mine. Aunt Lillian glanced at me, her expression flickering with unease, then looked away, fussing with her napkin. The room buzzed with anticipation for the meal, but I felt like I was drowning. "Mom," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. Calm but firm. "Where should I sit?" The table fell silent. Margaret paused, a serving spoon of mashed potatoes hovering mid-air, her smile tight. "Oh, Emily," she said, as if I'd asked for something true. "The table's full with everyone here. Why don't you grab a tray and eat upstairs just for tonight?" The words were light, but they landed like a guillotine. My family stared at their plates, their wine glasses, anywhere but me. Nathan's smirk grew, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" he said, his tone casual but venomous. "You're just here to stir up trouble, aren't you?" The room tilted, my vision blurring. I gripped the doorframe, searching for one face, one voice to defend me. Richard methodically sliced his turkey, eyes down. Sophie bit her lip, her gaze darting between me and Nathan, but she stayed silent. Rachel shifted uncomfortably, but placed her hand over Nathan's, aligning with him. Clara touched the sapphire ring, then dropped her hand when she saw me watching. Ethan, confused, looked to Clara, but she shook her head. Lillian and Henry exchanged glances, their silence deafening. Margaret resumed serving, as if suggesting I eat alone in a cold guest room was perfectly normal. This wasn't a mistake. This was my place in the family laid bare. Unwanted, unworthy, expendable. Memories flooded back, each one a wound. Age 7, waiting alone after piano lessons because my parents were at Nathan's soccer game. Age 12, eating lunch in a school bathroom after Nathan spread rumors I had a contagious rash. Age 16, grounded for a party Nathan falsely claimed I'd attended. My college graduation, when my parents left early because Nathan had a work emergency. Every achievement, my first byline, my investigative exposés, my Pulitzer nomination, met with indifference or sabotage. Nathan didn't just overshadow me, he erased me, and my family let him. But tonight, under his plate, was the truth. Evidence that could unravel his lies, his empire, his hold over them. And in my hand, the velvet box, a gift that could change everything, or destroy it. I looked at Nathan, his smirk unwavering, and felt something shift inside me. Not hurt, not anymore. It was clarity, sharp and cold. This wasn't about winning their love. It was about reclaiming my voice. The storm outside roared, but I was the real tempest now. I stepped forward, the dossier's weight grounding me. "Nathan," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the silence. "I have something special for you this Christmas." His smirk faltered just for a second, and I knew I had him. The game was on, and I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. The snow fell like a curtain as I drove away from the Harper mansion, the cliffside estate fading into the storm behind me. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, but my heart felt strangely light, as if I'd shed a weight I'd carried for decades. The dossier I'd left under Nathan's plate, those emails, voicemails, and the damning video, had ignited a fire I could still hear crackling in the dining room as I walked out. Raised voices, the scrape of chairs, the clatter of china. My family was unraveling, and for once I wasn't there to pick up the pieces. I, Emily Harper, investigative journalist, had finally stopped playing their rigged game. But as the windshield wipers battled the blizzard, a chill crept into my bones. The sliced brake line, the sabotaged railing, the chandelier that nearly crushed me, Someone had tried to stop me tonight, and I wasn't sure I'd escaped their reach. The road to the cliffside inn was treacherous, winding along the main coast where the sea roared below, its waves clawing at the rocks. My car's headlights barely pierced the snow, and every shadow felt like a threat. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting headlights to appear, tailing me. Nathan's face flashed in my mind, his smirk crumbling as he scanned the dossier, his eyes betraying something darker than anger. Fear. What was he hiding that made him so desperate to keep me silent? And who else in that room knew? The question gnawed at me, as persistent as the storm. I'd barely made it a mile when my phone buzzed, vibrating against the passenger seat. I ignored it, knowing who it would be. Margaret, demanding I apologize for ruining Christmas. Sophie, fishing for details about the dossier. Maybe even Richard, finally finding his voice after years of silence. But I wasn't ready to face them. Not yet. The inn's sign loomed ahead, glowing faintly through the snow. Cliffside Haven. It was a quaint, shingle-mail building perched on a bluff, its windows warm against the night. I parked, carefully checking the brakes this time, and grabbed my purse, the velvet gift box still inside, its weight a reminder of the grenade I'd detonated. As I stepped into the storm, a gust nearly knocked me over, and I swore I heard footsteps crunching behind me. I spun around, heart racing, but the snow was too thick, swallowing everything. Just the wind, I told myself. But my pulse didn't believe it. Inside, the inn's lobby was a cocoon of holiday cheer. A crackling fireplace, a Christmas tree strung with seashell ornaments, and the soft hum of carols from hidden speakers. The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with a name tag reading Hannah, offered a kind smile. "Just you tonight?" she asked, her eyes lingering on my soaked crimson gown, no doubt wondering why I was checking in alone on Christmas Eve. "Change of plans," I said, forcing a smile. Hannah's expression stayed neutral, but her gaze held a flicker of understanding. "I've got you in a room with a view of the ocean. The restaurant's serving a Christmas special till 9 if you're hungry." I thanked her, took the key card, and headed to the elevator, the dossier's aftermath still pulsing in my mind. My room was on the 3rd floor, cozy with nautical decor and a window overlooking the churning sea. I kicked off my heels, the carpet soft under my frozen feet, and sank onto the bed. The events of the night replayed like a film I couldn't pause. Margaret's icy dismissal, Nathan's cruel smirk, the family's silence as I stood in the dining room doorway, excluded from their perfect tableau. And then the dossier, the moment I'd dreamed of for months. I'd placed it under Nathan's plate during the table setup, my hands steady despite the adrenaline. No one noticed. Why would they? I was invisible to them, always had been. But when I handed Nathan the velvet box and pointed to the envelope, his face had changed. The emails where he bragged about framing me for leaking sources at my first paper, the voicemails plotting to turn our parents against me, the video from last Christmas. His voice slurred with whiskey, laughing about how easy it was to make me the family scapegoat. And the will? Grandmother Evelyn's real will, naming me as the heir to the sapphire ring Clara wore so smugly. Nathan's forgery had stolen it from me, just as he'd stolen my place in the family. I unzipped my purse and pulled out the velvet box, running my fingers over its smooth surface. It wasn't just a gift, it was a declaration of war. But war came with casualties, and I wasn't sure I'd escaped unscathed. The chandelier crashing inches from me as I left the bathroom still haunted me. I'd stepped out, wiping water from my face, when the crystal fixture plummeted, shattering on the hardwood floor. Glass sprayed, guests gasped, and Margaret called it an accident, but the whispers followed me. "Emily was standing right there," Aunt Lillian had murmured, her voice uneasy. The chandelier's chain looked frayed, but I'd seen enough tampered evidence in my career to know better. Someone had loosened it, just like the railing, just like the brakes. In the attic? God, the attic. Locked inside, a shadow, watching me through the crack, their breath heavy. He'd pounded on the door until it opened, but no one was there. Or so it seemed. My phone buzzed again, insistent. I sighed and checked the screen, a text from Sophie. What was in that envelope? Nathan's losing it. Are you okay? I stared at the words, the "are you okay" feeling like an afterthought. Sophie had fidgeted at the table, avoiding my eyes as Nathan mocked me, her silence as loud as his cruelty, but her text hinted at something more, curiosity, maybe even doubt. You were right about him, she'd written, cryptic and bloated. Right about what? Nathan's lies? Or something bigger, something that made him flee to London months later? A scandal I was somehow tied to? I didn't reply. Instead, I ordered room service, a turkey dinner with cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie, and ate by the window, watching snow blanket the coast. The solitude was strange but peaceful, like the calm after a bomb goes off. No eggshells to walk on, no barbs to dodge, just me and the truth. The truth had been my weapon, but it was also my cage. As a journalist, I'd spent years chasing it, exposing corruption, giving voice to the silenced, but in my own family, my truth was dismissed, twisted, erased. Nathan had built his empire on lies, not just about me, but about himself. The dossier wasn't just personal, it was professional. Those emails showed him sabotaging my career, yes, but also hinted at shadier dealings, offshore accounts, doctored financials, whispers of fraud. If I went public, it could destroy him, but it could also destroy me. The Harpers were a powerful family in Cape Elizabeth, their name tied to philanthropy, politics, tech. Taking Nathan down would mean taking on all of them, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that war. A knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. The room service tray was already cleared, so who... I peered through the peephole, my pulse spiking. No one. Just the empty hallway, its nautical wallpaper dimly lit. But as I turned away, a floorboard creaked outside, deliberate and slow. I froze, my breath shallow. "Hello," I called, my voice sharper than I intended. Silence. Then another creak. Retreating down the hall, I grabbed my phone, ready to dial the front desk, but stopped. What would I say? I think someone's following me because I exposed my brother's lies? I'd sound paranoid, just like Nathan always said. Instead, I wedged a chair under the doorknob and double-checked the lock, my journalist instincts screaming that this wasn't over. Sleep was impossible. I sat up, journaling the night's events, a habit Dr. Carter had encouraged. Nathan's face when he saw the dossier, Margaret's denial, Sophie's silence, the chandelier, the brakes. Someone wants me gone, but why? What are they afraid I'll find? The questions piled up, each one a thread in a web I couldn't yet see. Dr. Carter's words from our last session haunted me. You can't win a game rigged against you, Emily. The only way to win is to stop playing. I'd thought exposing Nathan would free me, but it had only tightened the noose. The family's reaction, Margaret's demand to see the papers, James reading the voicemail aloud, the tablecloth catching fire when Nathan lunged, proved they weren't ready for the truth. But Clara's gasp, her hand flying to the sapphire ring, was different. Why did she doubt Nathan so suddenly? What did she know? Morning came, gray and heavy, the storm easing but leaving a world buried in snow. I ordered breakfast, coffee, eggs, and toast, and dressed in the spare jeans and sweater I'd packed, the crimson gown now a crumpled reminder of last night. My phone was a minefield, missed calls from Margaret, Richard, even Lillian. A voicemail from Margaret, her voice tight. "Emily, this is unacceptable. You've ruined Christmas and upset everyone. Call me back so we can discuss your apology to Nathan." I deleted it, my anger flaring. An apology? For telling the truth? Richard's text was softer. "Your mother's upset. Please call." I ignored it. But Clara's message stopped me cold. "Can we talk? Not about the ring, about Nathan." My thumb hovered over the reply button, suspicion warring with curiosity. Clara had worn that ring like a trophy, flaunting it in my face. Why the sudden olive branch? Was she genuinely remorseful, or was this another of Nathan's traps? I agreed to meet her at the Salty Anchor, a seaside cafe in downtown Cape Elizabeth, at 10:00 a.m. The cafe was a cozy spot, its walls lined with fishing nets and faded photos of the harbor. Clara was already there, seated by a window, her dark hair pulled back, the sapphire ring conspicuously absent from her neck. She fidgeted with a napkin, her eyes red-rimmed like she hadn't slept either. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat across from her, her voice low, almost nervous. I didn't smile, didn't offer warmth. "Why are we here, Clara?" I asked, my tone neutral but firm. She took a deep breath, her fingers twisting the napkin into knots. "After you left, everything fell apart. Nathan tried to burn the papers in the fireplace, but Rachel grabbed them first. She read one of the emails aloud, an email where he called me a useful pawn in his game to keep you out of the family." I leaned back, my heart racing. "A pawn?" Clara had been my closest cousin growing up, almost a sister, until the ring drove a wedge between us. Nathan's manipulation wasn't news, but hearing it laid bare, in his own words, hit differently. "What else?" I pressed, my journalist instincts kicking in. Clara's eyes met mine, glistening with tears, and lied about the ring, Emily. "I thought Evelyn gave it to me, but last night, when you mentioned the will, I started remembering things. Nathan was there when Evelyn was sick, always whispering to her, bringing her papers to sign. I think he forged it." Her voice broke and she looked away, out at the snow-dusted harbor. "And there's more. He told me you were jealous, unstable, that you'd do anything to tear the family apart. I believed him. I'm so sorry." The apology landed, but it didn't erase the years of pain. "You wore that ring knowing it was mine," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "You let Nathan turn you against me." Clara nodded, tears spilling now. "I know. I was wrong. But he didn't just lie about you. He lied about everything. After you left, Rachel found texts on his phone to some woman in Boston, not her, and there were bank transfers, big ones, to accounts no one recognized. Nathan stormed out, and Rachel followed, screaming about divorce." I sat back, processing. Divorce? Offshore accounts? This was bigger than family drama. Nathan's tech empire was built on secrets, and I'd just cracked the surface, but why the sabotage? My brakes, the railing, the chandelier? What was he so afraid I'd uncover? Before I could ask, Clara slid a small box across the table. I opened it, my breath catching. The sapphire ring, its silver setting gleaming, lay nestled in velvet. "It was always yours," Clara said simply. "I'm sorry it took me so long." I touched the ring, memories of Evelyn flooding back, her stories of our ancestors, her promise that this ring would remind me of my strength. I slipped it onto my finger, the weight grounding me, but my mind was elsewhere. Clara's revelations confirmed Nathan's desperation, but they also raised the stakes. If he was moving money illegally, if he was cheating on Rachel, if he'd forged Evelyn's will, what else was he capable of? And who was helping him? The cafe door chimed, and I glanced up, my nerves on edge. A man in a dark coat stood at the counter, his back to us, but something about his posture felt off. Too still, too deliberate. I lowered my voice. "Clara, did anyone know you were meeting me?" She frowned, shaking her head. "No, I didn't tell anyone." "Why?" I didn't answer, my eyes on the man. He ordered coffee, his voice low, and sat at a table across the room, pulling out a newspaper but never turning the page. My journalist instincts screamed, "He's watching us." The brake line, the railing, the chandelier, the creak outside my hotel room. Someone was tracking me, and this felt like their next move. I leaned closer to Clara, keeping my voice calm. "We need to leave. Now." Her eyes widened, but she nodded, grabbing her coat. We slipped out the back door, the cold biting as we hurried down an alley to my car. The snow had stopped, but the air was thick with tension. As I unlocked the door, a shadow moved at the alley's mouth, a figure, hooded, too far to identify. "Emily," Clara gasped, clutching my arm. I shoved her into the passenger seat and jumped in, locking the doors. The figure didn't approach, but they didn't leave either, standing like a sentinel. I started the engine, my heart pounding, and peeled out, the tires slipping on ice. "Who was that?" Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I said, checking the rearview mirror. "But Nathan's not working alone." The drive back to the inn was silent, Clara's fear mirroring my own. I dropped her at her hotel, promising to call, and returned to my room, my mind racing. The ring on my finger felt like a target now, a symbol of everything Nathan wanted to bury. I locked the door, wedged the chair under the knob again, and opened my laptop, pulling up the dossier files I'd backed up on a secure drive. The emails were worse than I'd realized. One, sent to an unknown contact, read, "She's getting too close. Handle it." Another mentioned a London deal tied to a shell company. The voicemail recorded last Christmas was chilling. "Emily's a problem, but she's predictable. One push and she'll break." The video was the worst. Nathan, drunk, laughing about how he'd paid a colleague to leak my sources, nearly ending my career, but there was something else in the files, something I hadn't noticed before. A photo, grainy but clear enough, of Nathan meeting a man in a parking lot. The man's face was obscured, but his coat matched the one from the cafe. My phone buzzed, pulling me back. Another text from Sophie. "Emily, please. Nathan's gone. Rachel's a mess. What did you do?" I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Gone? To London like the rumors said? Or somewhere closer, plotting his next move? I typed a reply. "What do you mean, gone?" But deleted it. Sophie wasn't my ally, not yet. Instead, I called Dr. Carter, leaving a voicemail. "Emily. I did it. I confronted them. But something's wrong. Nathan's hiding more than I thought, and I think someone's after me." I hung up, my hands shaking, and turned back to the laptop. I needed answers, but every thread led to more questions. Who was the man in the photo? What was the London deal? And why did Sophie's text feel like a warning? The inn's quiet was shattered by a thud against my window. I jumped, my heart in my throat, and crept to the glass. A branch, caught in the wind, scraped the pane, but below, in the parking lot, a car idled, its headlights off. I couldn't see the driver, but the car was familiar. Sleek, black, like one I'd seen at the mansion. Nathan's? Or someone else's? I grabbed my phone, ready to call Hannah at the front desk, when the car's lights flicked on, blinding me. It revved, then sped off, vanishing into the night. I sank to the floor, my breath ragged, the ring glinting on my finger. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about survival. The next week was a blur of caution and calculation. I stayed at the inn, avoiding the mansion, but the threats didn't stop. A note slipped under my door one night, typed and unsigned, "Drop it, or you'll regret it." My rental car's tires were slashed, forcing me to rely on cabs. A package arrived at the inn, addressed to me, containing a single photo. Me, standing in the mansion's dining room, moments before I handed Nathan the dossier. Someone had been watching, closer than I'd realized. I reported the incidents to the local police, but without concrete evidence tying them to Nathan, they could do little. Family disputes get messy, the officer said, his tone dismissive. Maybe take a break from Cape Elizabeth. I wanted to scream. This wasn't a dispute. It was a conspiracy. Clara became my unexpected ally, meeting me in secret to share what she'd learned. Nathan's empire was crumbling, investors pulling out, rumors of an SEC investigation. Rachel had filed for divorce, citing infidelity and fraud, and was cooperating with authorities. Clara showed me a text from Nathan sent the night I left. "Tell Emily she's dead to me." The words were chilling, but they also confirmed he was rattled. "He's scared," Clara said, her voice firm. "You've got something he can't control." I nodded, but the weight of that something was crushing me. The dossier was my leverage, but it was also a beacon, drawing danger closer. Sophie reached out again, this time with a call. I hesitated, then answered. "Emily, you have to stop," she said, her voice trembling. "Nathan's in trouble, and you're making it worse. He says you're spreading lies to ruin him." I laughed, bitter. "Lies? I have proof, Sophie. You saw it?" She went quiet, then whispered, "I know, but there's more you don't understand. Meet me tomorrow, please." I agreed, against my better judgment, setting a time at a public park, but when I arrived, Sophie wasn't alone. James was with her, his face grim, and behind them, a man in a dark coat. The same man from the cafe. "Emily," Sophie said, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to talk about Nathan's deal in London." The conversation was a bombshell. Sophie revealed Nathan had been funneling money through a shell company, tied to a London-based investor with ties to organized crime. The deal was a cover for laundering, and my dossier had accidentally exposed a piece of it. James, who worked in finance, had suspected for months but stayed silent to protect Sophie. "Nathan's desperate," James said. "He thinks you're working with the feds." I shook my head, stunned. "I'm not, but someone's trying to kill me." Sophie's face paled. "Then you need to disappear, Emily, before they find you." The man in the coat stepped closer, his hand in his pocket, and I bolted, sprinting through the park, my heart pounding. I didn't stop until I reached a crowded cafe, my breath ragged, the ring burning against my skin. Back at the inn, I made a decision. I couldn't run forever, but I couldn't fight alone. I contacted a colleague at my paper, a veteran reporter with SEC contacts, and shared the dossier's financial details, keeping my name out of it. Within days, headlines broke. Tech mogul Nathan Harper under investigation for fraud. Nathan fled to London, but the scandal followed, tying him to the shell company and a string of illicit deals. I stayed in Cape Elizabeth, rebuilding ties with those who'd earned my trust. Sophie apologized, tearfully, at a quiet lunch, admitting she'd been too scared to speak up. "I want to be a better sister," she said, and I agreed to try, with boundaries. Richard met me for coffee, his guilt raw. "I failed you," he said, his voice breaking. "I let Nathan control us all." We were cautious, but a new connection was forming, fragile but honest. Margaret was different. Her calls grew desperate, then angry, accusing me of destroying the family. "We can move past this if you apologize," she texted. I didn't respond. Clara, though, became a true ally, helping me document Evelyn's stories and uncover more of Nathan's lies. We found a hidden letter from Evelyn, tucked in an old book, confirming the ring was mine and warning about Nathan's ambition. It was validation, a gift from beyond the grave. 6 months later, I stood in my Portland loft, the walls painted a bold cobalt, artwork reflecting my soul. The 4th of July party was in full swing, laughter filling the air. Sophie was there, tentative but trying. Richard brought a bottle of wine, his smile genuine. Clara wore a pendant Evelyn had left her, a sign of our healed bond. My colleague, now a friend, toasted to my courage. Her husband joking about my detective skills. Michael, the environmental engineer I'd started dating, squeezed my hand, his respect for my boundaries grounding me. The sapphire ring gleamed on my finger, Evelyn's legacy alive in me. Outside, fireworks lit the sky, their colors dancing over the city. I stepped onto the balcony, the journal in my hand, and wrote, "I thought family was blood, a chain I couldn't break. Now I know it's choice, built on respect, not obligation." I walked away from their table, but I built my own, surrounded by people who see me. The truth set me free, not to destroy, but to live. I closed the journal, the ring catching the light, and smiled. The storm was over and I was home.